Yes.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to go ahead and call to order the meeting for June 1st, 2023. I'd like to ask members who are calling in by phone to identify themselves prior to calling the meeting to order.
Vice Chair, we have everyone identified on Zoom.
Thank you. Okay, we will go ahead and start with the pledge. I'd like to please ask Mr. Oscar Ortiz to lead us in the pledge. Thank you.
Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we do have a quorum confirmed.
Yes.
So with that, we are holding this meeting in compliance with Brown Act rules relating to telephonic video conferencing meetings. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. Just as a reminder, to reduce background noise, please ensure that your microphone is muted when not in use. Okay, we're going to enter our public comment period. We will open public comment period of this meeting. This is a time of members of the public to offer comment for matters that are within SCAG's jurisdiction but are not listed on today's agenda. Have we received any public comment before the 5 p.m.?
We have not received anything before or after the deadline.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak? We will first go to in-public speakers, and I see none. Madam Clerk, do we have any remote location?
I am not seeing any raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, so that would be for either remote location or virtual attendees.
I stand corrected. I apologize. I see one raised hand, and that is Patrick Sipple, I believe.
Go ahead.
Yeah, correct. Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick
morning.
Sipple, with a company called Clear Result. We're an energy program implementer all over the US, but we are delivering a program called Public Energy Performance. It's a CPUC regulated third-party implementer, which is ourselves, delivered program in the Southern California Edison territory. It's what is called an energy efficiency program, and on tap, available to all the cities, counties, special districts, tribal entities, private universities, private and public K through 12, and federal entities. So quite a list, but a number which fall within SCAG's realm. These organizations are eligible to participate. It's a no cost, truly no cost program. Entities are already actually paying for it with their public purpose funds. You pay on every rate, or every time you pay a utility bill to SCE. So it's a way to get that money back. And essentially the way it works is it's a 3-year, 2.5-year program at this point, with potential for extension, aimed at delivering a holistic energy efficiency, energy management program for these organizations. And tied into that is engineering support, data support. We build models for city buildings, for school districts buildings, so we can see a whole building approach to the energy use, and then identify ways that the organization can reduce the energy footprint and incentivize all those ways on top of monitoring it and providing the real evidence of the energy reduction, cost reduction, certainly. So there's a number of pathways that are available for organizations to participate in. Strategic energy management is our primary pathway. There's a number of advantages to it. I believe some of the material will be sent out after this meeting, so I'm not going to dig too much into it. But we were at the conference a few weeks ago down there in Palm Springs as well. And the program is fantastic. We've been delivering this to 12, 14 years to cities and all other types of entities all over the country and Canada, as I said. So it's a program that works. It is new to this region, but it's something that we have a lot of history with delivering. And we're excited to have it on hand. So for those of you that are in touch with facilities, public works, departments, maintenance departments in your cities, in your special districts, wherever this makes sense. We would love to get a meeting. Myself and Rhonda is on the call today as well. And our information will be passed to all of you afterwards as well. But it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and looking forward to hearing from some of you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, do we have any additional public comment?
I am not seeing any raised hands, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. We will now go on to review and prioritize our agenda items. I would like to remind everyone to unmute your phone before speaking. Please state your name during deliberations and whether you're making a motion or offering a second. For those who have joined by phone, press *6 to mute and unmute your phone. We will start with public comment for this item. Do we have any public comment here in chambers? We do not. Do we have anybody online?
I don't see anybody with raised hands for comment on the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. So on the consent calendar, being that there's no public comment, I will bring it back for comment from members of this body. Is there any comment? Do we have any motions?
Dennison will move to approve consent.
Clark, second.
We have a motion to approve by Dennison, a second by Clark. This would be to approve the consent calendar, items 1, 2, 3, and receive and file items 4 through 10.
Okay, I'll proceed with roll call.
Thank you.
Damon Alexander. And just to clarify, this is for approval of the consent calendar. Is that a yes?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Cindy Allen. Ana Beltran. Phil Brock.
Aye.
Margaret Clark. Robert Copeland. Paul Courtney.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. And to confirm, this is a yes on the consent calendar?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jenny Crosswhite.
Aye.
Maria Davila. Ned Davis. Rick Dennison.
Dennison, yes.
Sherry Horn. Britt Huff.
Huff, yes.
Dan Kelmick.
Aye.
Joe Kelmick.
Aye.
Elaine Litster. Vianney Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you. Lauren Meister.
Yes.
Cynthia Moran.
Yes.
Oscar Ortiz.
Yes.
Luis Blancarte.
Yes.
Jennifer Stark.
Yes.
Connor Trout. Stephanie Virgen. Del Welty. Edward Wilson. Okay. And
Sherry Horn votes yes. Sorry.
no, noted, thank you. Vice Chair, the motion passes with 16 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 0 abstentions.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the information item portion of our agenda, item number 11, Clean Transportation Technology Program Update. This is a PV study and clean transportation technology compendium. Do we have any public comment on this item for those that are here in chambers? For agenda item number 11, do we have any public comment from those participating virtually?
Vice Chair, I am not seeing any raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Being no public comment, we will go ahead and turn this over to Allison Linder, Senior Planner with SCAG. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is my first time presenting back in person since pre-2020, so
Welcome back.
it's a little different doing it in front of a screen, but I'm always excited to be here. So Jennifer, do I use the clicker? next slide. Okay, I'll just cue you, Jennifer.
You can
Thank
cue
you
me.
so much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So this morning, I'll be providing an update on our Clean Transportation Technology Program, and I'll be sharing my time with Taylor Wilden, who is the consultant he was the project manager of the consultant team that did our passenger electric vehicle site suitability study. That project created a lot of great resources and just concluded in February. So Taylor will be walking us through some of that, and he will be joining us on Zoom. But prior to that, I wanted to provide an update on two exciting things in the Clean Transportation Technology Program. First, you are probably aware, but we passed a Clean Transportation Technology resolution and policy at our April 6th board meeting. And right now we're in the midst of preparing a Clean Transportation Technology Compendium, which will inform our Connect SoCal 2024 plan. So just a little bit more information on the policy. The Clean Transportation Technology Policy had three primary purposes. The first is just to formalize this. Oh, sorry, next slide. Thank you, Jennifer. The first is to just formalize the Clean Transportation Technology Program. We've been doing a lot of great work, and this kind of formalizes our role in providing support for the region through the various activities we do, planning studies, resource and tool provision, coordination, collaboration, and advocacy. We also created a new definition of, well, not new, but a formal definition of clean transportation technology, which is zero and near zero emission vehicles. They're supporting infrastructure and facilitating technologies that reduce environmental impact over their life cycle. Two important things I want to call attention to in the definition are that we do define clean transportation technology as both zero and near zero emissions. And we also include life cycle in the definition. So we're not only looking at tailpipe emissions, we're looking at a holistic perspective of how transportation is produced, operates, and is disposed of. The Clean Transportation Technology Policy also includes a formal definition of our policy on technology neutrality. And this is a position we've long held, but it's formalized now. So SCAG has never been in a position to pick and choose technologies. It is, however, our role to make information as transparent as possible and support users in their decision-making process. We don't want to stifle innovation, and we want to empower users as much as possible. And the policy, of course, also includes a focus on equity, meaning that we want to make sure that as technology is deployed, it's accessible to all users. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, so as I mentioned, the policy includes technology neutrality, and one of the programs we have to support that is the creation of a clean transportation technology compendium. This is the direction to create this is in fact included in the policy. And the goal here is to make information about clean technologies as transparent as possible to support users in their decision making. The policy includes all modes, passenger, transit, rail, heavy duty, and it includes a variety of products that support the clean transportation ecosystem. So it's not just vehicles anymore, it's vehicles, infrastructure, but also a whole new host of products, many in the IT realm that support the deployment. So looking at technologies to support payment for multiple users, to support vehicle to grid integration and energy efficiency. So that compendium is underway. Next slide, please. So just to give you an update on where we are, the development of this has so far created scoping criteria, and the scoping criteria indicate what would be included. We want obviously to include technologies that reduce both GHG and local criteria pollutant emissions. We are requiring that the technology be able to integrate into our already existing transportation system. And we want products that are either commercially eligible or commercially available or eligible to be commercially available soon. The table on the slide is just a snapshot of some of the descriptive information we're providing about the different technologies. So the slide shows product description, capital cost, maintenance cost for charging infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, we're also doing this for different types of vehicles and supporting products, and other information points include total cost of ownership, like availability, how easy, how many models there are, for instance, and longevity, which is a concern. If you're going to invest in something, how likely is it that that product will last and give you the value that you're making for your investment. We also launched a survey of manufacturers and vendors, calling for them to share information about their products and technologies. We're going to be going through the submissions and compiling this at a technology category level. So we won't be sharing the particular brand, but whatever was submitted, we'll be compiling that based on categories of information. And then given the kind of survey of all the technologies that are available, we'll be looking at what are the big challenges and developing strategies to meet those challenges. So for instance, cost, permitting, technology integration, et cetera. Next slide, please. And that brings me to Queue Up Taylor. I just wanted to briefly introduce the PEV site suitability study that we completed. This was a really exciting project where 18 different cities in the SCAG region had applied to participate and were included. We really use this study as an opportunity to develop tools to support cities. So even though there were 18 that were kind of had a deep dive of focus, they're really representative of the broader region, and now all the tools are currently available on our website.
Sorry, what's a PEV?
Passenger electric vehicle.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. And so I will let Tyler continue.
Thank you, Allison. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. We can start by going to the next slide. So as Allison mentioned, okay, great. So as Allison mentioned, this project included representatives from 18 different cities throughout the SCAG region. They're summarized here on this slide. We wanted to, and it included a mix of some smaller cities, some larger cities that already have made substantial progress on their EV infrastructure, and then a significant representation from the San Gabriel Valley cities. And again, I think one of the benefits of this project was that each of these cities was at a different place along their EV journey. And so it allowed us to provide tools to support other cities that are at those different various stages along their own EV journey, to support cities that are very early on, or cities that, once they've already made some progress, there's some resources available for them as well. Next slide. And so as Allison mentioned, there was a variety of different tools and resources that we produced as part of this project, and we'll go through more of them in a little bit more detail later. But we did have a regionally focused EV infrastructure plan. A lot of the results from the suitability analysis, which we'll talk about later, are up on the PEV Atlas on SCAG's website. We provided a lot of design guidelines and examples on how different site hosts can think about planning for and sizing different EV charging station projects, what sort of makes sense at a given site. A lot of educational material that are really suitable for different audiences. We've got fact sheets that are more suitable for a general audience. We've also got some brochures and guides tailored towards different EV or different site owner types and for public sector stakeholders. We did a lot of work on looking at city policy regarding EV permitting and how they can help streamline that, and then providing, at least what was available at the time, a lot of EV funding sources to help bring down a lot of the capital costs that go in with installing this EV infrastructure. Next slide. So just to sort of level set with where we're at as we're wrapping up this project. You all are probably aware that in August of last year, CARB passed the Advanced Clean Cars 2 rule, which mandates that starting in 2035, all new passenger car sales have to be zero emission. We expect the vast majority of these to be plug-in battery electric vehicles. And this helps formalize Governor Newsom's executive order that targets having 8 million zero emission vehicles on the road by 2030. And the state expects that they're going to need about 1.2 million chargers statewide to support those 8 million vehicles. Those 1.2 million EV chargers are really publicly accessible chargers. So that's not including any chargers that people install at their personal residence, primarily at single family homes. That does include multi-unit. The 1.2 does include multi-unit dwellings. And so at least where we were at the end of last year, the state had sold, or more than 1.4 million EVs were sold in the state. We actually just passed the state's goal of 1.5 million EVs on the road 2 years ahead of schedule. So that's really exciting. We're seeing, basically 1 in 5 of new vehicle sales in the state to be zero emission. And we had about 80,000 chargers installed in the state at the end of last year. I think it's gone up a little bit since then. So the EV adoption is happening, but we still have a very significant charging gap throughout the state. And so as we go to the next slide, we're going to start to see what that looks like and what that means for the SCAG region. So of those 1.2 million chargers statewide, we think that within the SCAG region and that 6-county area, that we're going to need about over 500,000 chargers by the end of the decade. And there's a lot of work to do there. And so we started to look at what that means for each of the different participating cities, how many chargers they may need in their areas by the end of the decade. And the CEC approach did focus heavily on level 2 chargers. Given a lot of funding that's out there for DC fast chargers, we also provided different infrastructure pathway options if cities are more interested in installing DC fast chargers, basically swapping out 5 level 2s for 1 DC fast charger. We're kind of pulling that from the latest building code cycle, which is what builders are allowed as they're building new construction for like commercial and multifamily properties. So this gives you a sense on where we need to go in 7 very short years. Next slide, please. So we know how many chargers we need. The next question we need to ask is, where do we put them? And so that's where this suitability analysis comes in. And so we put together 4 different scenarios to really reflect different stages of EV adoption and a different suite of priorities to really help these cities target where this EV infrastructure can be best placed to help spur that EV adoption. And so we looked at probably about 25 or so different variables and then sort of adjusted a subset of them in different ways to really create 4 different scenarios. And again, this is, I think, probably one of the bigger, more valuable tools out of the study is it allows anyone to use this as a resource to guide infrastructure, cities, project developers, planners to really identify those priority areas. We excluded single-family residential in this study because single families, we expect most of that to take care of itself, not terribly difficult for the average single-family home to install a level 2 charger in their garage or their parking lot. And so some of these blank spaces that you're seeing, for example, in the city of LA here, are really just ignoring single-family residential, and it made the computing process a little bit easier for us as well. Next slide, please. And so, as I mentioned, the results of these are now up on the PEV Atlas, so it is publicly accessible. You can get a bit of a snapshot here up on the slide. And again, a lot of different stakeholders and users are able to use this resource now. Next slide, please. And so one of the other things, as I mentioned, we did different scenarios. And so I think there's a little bit of extra value in looking at those different scenarios at once. You can start to see patterns and trends that really help a stakeholder target near, medium, and long-term areas for EV infrastructure. So we've got an example here just in the city of Rosemead. And so we can see across the different scenarios, there are certain areas that are scoring highly in all different situations that we looked at. So those become really high priority areas for someone to look at. for EV infrastructure. We're also seeing areas that are scoring very lowly across all scenarios. And so that sort of can save time and say, okay, we probably shouldn't be looking there. And then you can start to see other areas that change between low, mid, and high scoring throughout the scenarios. And that helps you figure out, that helps you put your phasing together on which areas to prioritize as that EV infrastructure starts to grow. So again, one of the other benefits of that tool that we've created. Next slide, please. So the suitability analysis helps us figure out where we should go. The next step is, okay, when you figured out, you found a site, right? What makes sense at that site? And so that is where we've started to develop these site evaluations and design guides to help inform, to provide some best practices for different stakeholders or developers on what makes sense for chargers. And so we actually referenced the last cycle's building code, since that was active at the time of the project. It actually blends very nicely with existing building trigger conditions in the newest building code. But we're basically recommend 10% of stalls in existing buildings to be targeted for EV infrastructure, mostly looking at level 2 chargers. That's in line with the CEC's charging analysis and charging analysis and evaluation for the state. We do also then provide recommendations on when we should go above and beyond that. So for example, in small multi-unit dwellings, we would actually recommend installing level 2 chargers in all of the stalls so that all the tenants would then have access to a charger. And when there's sites that have typically low dwell time, less than an hour, we recommend those for DC fast chargers, and then swap that out at a ratio of 5 to 1. So I know I'm getting into the weeds here a little bit, but these are the types of these are the types of recommendations that we've been provided as part of the study that we believe are really best practices within the industry. Next slide. And so we looked at 100 different sites as part of the study. And there's something that I do want to kind of make very clear here. The suitability analysis is a really good compass, and it helps point us in the right direction on where that infrastructure is needed. But there's always going to be site-specific characteristics that determine whether or not a site is viable. Factors like the size of the parking lot, proximity to power connections, and ADA compliance all will impact the viability and the final cost of really putting EV infrastructure in the ground. And so this is just one example of one of the sites that we did. And again, just it helps a stakeholder think about the type of project that could exist at this. And we see these as outreach tools for the cities, since a lot of the sites were on privately owned area that the city wouldn't necessarily have control over implementation. Becomes a resource to approach different stakeholders or different site hosts and say, hey, this study identified this site as a good candidate for EV charging. We've done some work over what a project might look like. Let's talk about how we can help make this happen. Next slide, please. One of the other things that I mentioned early on is we had a pretty significant policy analysis part of our project. So at the start of the project, AB 1236 was the law of the land, which basically required cities to pass ordinances and develop checklists to help streamline EV charging station permitting, since that can still be a significant barrier to getting that infrastructure in the ground. And then throughout the project, AB 970 was passed, which really built on and in some ways superseded AB 1236 and started to establish timelines for cities to review and approve these permits within a given amount of time, depending on how large that project was. And if the city doesn't meet those timelines, then the permits are then considered complete and approved. So this was, again, kind of the state helping to push this. They realized that this is really important to meeting our greenhouse gas and air quality goals. So they're, this is the state's way of helping to shepherd along this part of the development process. Next slide. And so what we did throughout this process was really sit down with each of the participating cities to understand how they are issuing EV charging station permits. These are all pretty much handled as a plan check. And we found, I think we learned a couple of things throughout talking with all of these different cities. A lot of cities are handling, if it's for a residential, usually it's over the counter, you're gonna get that in a day or two. It's a standard electrical permit. When we're talking larger projects at commercial facilities, those tend to take few days, maybe a few weeks, really depending on the complexity here, and starts to involve different different stakeholders. You know, sometimes you start to get civil and electrical engineers involved. We do expect most of the cities to be able to meet these 970 deadlines. We also found that while some cities may not necessarily be in compliance with 1236 from the perspective of having passed an ordinance or having a checklist posted, they've met the spirit of the law by really issuing these permits very quickly. And we found that very consistently across the participating cities. We also found that, you know, through this stakeholder engagement effort, a lot of cities are interested in installing publicly owned or at least accessible EV charging stations on their facilities. But there are some challenges that we saw were also pretty consistent challenges on not understanding, you know, how to develop projects and select the proper equipment, being able to access different funding opportunities, and then ongoing operation and maintenance of those charging stations was something that a lot of cities just didn't quite understand yet. Next slide. As part of this stakeholder engagement, we also recognize that, again, this project was designed to help spur general EV adoption. So we wanted to engage the community to really understand what they're seeing as common barriers to them owning and adopting an EV in the future. And so we attended, I think, 15 different events throughout the SCAG region and issued a survey where we collected over nearly 500 different results. And again, some common themes that we gathered from here: lack of or not aware of the public infrastructure, that coupled with still some range anxiety, really are some of the largest barriers on someone wanting to, you know, feeling comfortable enough to adopt an EV. There's still some work to do on bringing awareness on the different benefits of owning an EV, both from a financial and environmental standpoint. But despite these barriers, a lot of the people that we spoke to understand that EV ownership is coming. It will increase, and we need to plan for this, and they're eager to learn more. So I think continuing to provide these resources and educational materials on electric vehicles, I think will go a long way towards spurring that adoption, and then again continuing to push for increasing public infrastructure will also go a long way in helping to combat those barriers. Next slide, please. And so towards the end of this project, we did a lot of, I'm almost going to call it like promotion of, and really sharing the results of the study. We did a Toolbox Tuesday with SCAG in mid-December that involved a lot of different SCAG participants, you know, explaining how, you know, the work, even if the cities weren't participating in the study, there's a lot of results that are relevant to them. We then presented at several different city council presentations or to their staff, and really just highlighting, again, kind of what we're doing today is, you know, the results of the study, what it means for them, and what are some of the next steps that they can take. Next slide, please. And so some of the broad recommendations for the cities throughout this project, one of the things that we really wanted to help push for was for cities to take an inventory of their current EV infrastructure and then really start to establish some targets for them, you know, for EV infrastructure in the ground in their city by 2030 that aligns with statewide goals. Again, the numbers that we showed before, they're not a requirement by any means, but we do think it's a useful target. And there are different pathways depending on if they want to pursue, you know, maybe more level 2 charging or more level 3 DC fast charging. They've got an option to figure out what works best for them. And then to help spark that infrastructure development, really start to continue to evaluate all their city-owned properties, and then there's a lot of fleet conversion requirements pushed on the state. I think we think that's another good way of showing that EVs are viable for the average person if they start to see, you know, the cities adopt these vehicles. We also recognize that the vast majority of the EV infrastructure that's going to go on the ground will not be owned and operated by the public sector. It's going to be owned and operated by the private sector. And so there's a larger city role here to help encourage private development through different levers so they can pull, like policy, funding, and coordination. And so we've evaluated REACH codes to help increase EV infrastructure as part of new construction. We've also provided some examples on and recommendations for having a dedicated city webpage so that becomes a trusted source of per EV information for their residents and communities. And then to continue reviewing their permitting process and continue to look for efficiencies, especially on these larger or more complex projects. And then using the site evaluation that we created as an outreach tool to spark that project development and privately owned on privately owned sites. And then they've also got the suitability analysis results to then target future outreach efforts. And the templates and best practices and design guides that we've put together can really help with some of those preliminary layouts and project sizing efforts. And I think that was the last slide for me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Taylor. That was great. I just wanted to offer the last slide to wrap up the update, kind of put a bookend on the update and tell you a little bit about some of our next steps. So first of all, as Taylor mentioned, that we did do a great deal of outreach already to share the results of the study to different cities and also San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments committee meetings. We are willing to do that for your city if that's something that you're interested in. You can reach out. And in terms of ongoing work, we are working on development of Connect SoCal as many of our staff are. We are going to be continuing to set the vision for zero emission transportation in the region. Of course, using the definition included in our clean transportation technology policy. We're going to be working with our with strategies that demonstrate our ability to meet and or exceed state targets where possible. And we're working on finalizing the clean technology compendium. Another great project that was way too much information for today is that we did kick off our study of supporting infrastructure for medium and heavy duty zero emission trucks. That's a fairly involved study where we're working with California Energy Commission and other partners, and both statewide and regionally, to develop a regional roadmap for zero emission trucking infrastructure. And as usual, we're continuing to offer stakeholder support and outreach as we work towards this great vision of zero emission transportation. And that concludes our update. Both Taylor and I are available for questions if the committee has any.
Thank you, Allison. I will now entertain comments from members of the Environmental Committee. Just a reminder, if a member of this body is attending remotely, but it is not at a noticed location on the agenda, they may observe but may not participate in any discussion or voting of this body. So with that, I'm going to ask AV to go back to slide number 10, planning targets, CEC projections. And with that, I will recognize the Honorable Margaret Clark for first questions.
Yes. Well, I have several questions.
Yeah, I think this is the one where you
Oh,
signaled
yeah.
to me.
Yeah, what was MUD? What is DCFC? That's to me.
MUD
that's
is
part of the-
multi-unit dwelling.
What?
MUD is multi-unit dwelling.
Okay, thank you.
And DCFC is DC fast charger. It's a type of charger that can charge much
What
quicker.
does DC stand for?
Distributed current.
Direct current.
Direct current.
Direct current fast charger.
yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. Then I'd like to go back to the slide that has my city as an example. The tools to support city sustainability analysis. Can you pull that back up? I don't know what the
I
numbers
think that
are.
might be number
It's after
11,
this.
the next slide after the one that it's currently being shown. Let me see what it looks like, Margaret.
It looks, oh,
Okay,
it
there you
says-
go.
It's, I think, the next one.
It's the one that has the 3 side by side, maybe 13, number 13. There we go.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. I want to know, first of all, are these mandates or just possibilities and the private owner has to agree?
Yeah, so this is completely informational.
Mhm.
What we did was create 3 different scenarios based on like 3 different sets of priorities.
Mhm.
And also kind of considering where different places in the region are. So one of the scenarios was based on like what is the most market ready? What's the most place that's likely to attract investment? So high density, higher income. And then we also looked at what could kind of be called as like an equity scenario. So looking at places that the market might not be as eager to invest in. And our recommendation is that cities who are just starting out will have an easier time with those kind of like market friendly investment areas. But there's other cities who've already covered that. And so they're kind of looking at where they can expand. So that's why we have the 3 scenarios. And there's some amount of phasing involved. So like I said, like where you are depends on what you want to prioritize. But the great thing is that looking at them as a whole, you can see, if some areas are green in all 3 scenarios, that's a great place to invest. If are green, meaning they're highly scored. If they're green.
Highly what?
If they're green, meaning that they're highly scored.
And what is, okay, here's what is very concerning to me. How did you pick the one that is in yellow to the left?
Which one?
Are you referring to the brown circle in the first graphic?
Yeah, with the black circle,
Yeah.
circle.
So what we're showing there is if you look at that spot across all 3, the color changes. So it's sort of mid scoring in the first scenario, high scoring in the second scenario, and then sort of low scoring in the third. And so this is just showing, as that site may not be something you want to look at right now, but as you start to build out some of your infrastructure, it's sort of like a second phase opportunity.
What are the 3 reasons there? The yellow, green, and orange.
So that's just the score under that
I know,
scenario.
but what's
so
it
what
based on?
so there was a whole suite of different criteria. We looked at existing EV ownership. We looked at existing charging infrastructure, income, disadvantaged communities, the land use types. We've got a whole, we looked at proximity to transit.
Can I jump in?
But, yes, please.
These are 3, there's Maryvale is we don't call them orphanage anymore, but whatever, right there. My church and another church, and that's it.
So
this is kind of weird to me.
Okay.
And if you were going to do it, would the entity be paid to do it?
So I think, let me go back to your first question, which
Okay.
was, is this something binding or recommended? So the answer is definitely, this is a tool. There's nothing binding about the suitability analysis. This is something that we've made publicly available so that people who are interested in investing can look and see which scores are ranked as high potential sites. And then they can choose which scenario they're interested in to see which ones are highest potential based on certain criteria. So this is intended as an outreach, as a tool for users. There's nothing binding about it that, is saying you have to invest here first.
And it's the city that would invest or the charging the.
Well, so that really depends, right? So like, I think for the most part, the private sector is going to be the one to invest in these stations. The city's role is going to be to facilitate where possible. So yes, there might be some city-owned land that is of key interest, like a library or a city hall or a public park. But for the most part, it's going to be the private sector that's looking at this. But what the city can do is kind of like exactly what you're doing now, kind of reality check or fact check. And then from within this whole suite of scored parcels, determine what makes the most sense for your city. And you can kind of use that to do your outreach and coordination with developers and investors. So one other caveat I would mention is we scored every single parcel in the SCAG region except for single family residential. So, something that's capturing that much data, there might be certain things that when you ground truth it, it's not necessarily the best. So it's
Right,
kind of a
because-
combination of
yeah.
local knowledge
Because
and
thi-
use of this tool to
particular
determine it.
Is in residential across the street and everything. Now, the one with the red is good because that's right off the 60 freeway, so I could understand that totally. And then the blue is right near City Hall. We already have, we're gonna have the ribbon cutting for the EV chargers at our library, which is next to our City Hall. So that's perfect, but
awesome.
this is just like, what? So
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, and then I have a question about, you mentioned that zero emission or near zero, and then looking at the life cycle. And electricity may be zero emission, but the life cycle on the batteries, for example, that's a big, my understanding, that's a big issue. So that could weigh in the opposite. But how clean is renewable natural gas? And like we, I think it was with SCAG, we visited the Paris, I forget the company that does it, but they're taking organics and making clean natural gas that can go in the pipeline. So how do they weigh so that we could have balance? Because one of the things that's huge in both of our agendas at the regional council and here is the equity issue. And EV vehicles are very expensive. So if we can find a clean energy that can go in a cheaper car, then we get where we want to go and not hurt low income. So
Yeah, I'm gonna defer the specific answer on renewable natural gas. I'd rather
okay,
look up that in terms of its greenhouse gas reduction potential and renewability. But overall, I would say I agree with you. We do need to take into consideration more than just charging stations. I will say though that I think, I don't know, Taylor, you might have this information readily available, but if I remember right, hydrogen passenger cars were just a fraction of what's available on the market for compared to battery electric
right,
cars.
but is it clean? Is the power clean
Oh.
so that we can move toward that?
I-
What I don't want to see is just because there's a law by Newsom at 3035, everybody has to do this. I want to see if we can meet the, clean or near zero emission that can be much easier to buy for the average person. I can't afford an EV.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
I
think
can,
Taylor wants
maybe
to
I can
jump in.
take a call. I don't know if this is, I can attempt to respond to this because I think there's maybe a little more nuance in what you mean by clean. I don't know how you're defining that. Depending how we define that, this answer may or
Well,
may
it's
not
SCAG
resonate
that said
well.
it. It's SCAG that
Well,
said it.
So if we're looking at zero and near
Zero
zero emissions,
emission
I
or
can speak to,
near zero
Sorry.
emission. How do
so
you
how are we
define that?
defining near zero? Okay, so how do we find near zero? I think we,
Right.
Allison, I remember when this came up, we were talking about
near zero
that
is,
resolution.
so near zero is, this is something we're going to be discussing when we release the clean technology compendium.
Okay.
It's near zero is really difficult because it's a little bit of a moving target. So California Air Resources Board defines near zero differently depending on the type of vehicle. And it changes as the vehicles change. So I think in our policy, we defined it as a significant improvement or a significant reduction. We kept it a little bit vague. And I think the reason for that is to allow us to consider the range of possibilities that exist. So things that you're bringing up wouldn't outright be eliminated because they didn't meet a really technical definition put out by California Air Resources Board. So, I think generally
They would not be eliminated?
they would not be eliminated from our consideration.
Okay.
So generally, I think significant improvement according to the regulatory standards is like maybe 99% cleaner. So it's kind of pretty close,
Right.
but not 100%. It's pretty close, but not completely zero. But we intentionally define that really broadly so that we wouldn't have to be, we wouldn't date ourselves as CARB continues to update the regulations. And B, so that we can be open-minded to allow for innovative products to be considered. So I would say that like as Taylor said, depends what you mean by clean, but there's different
Yeah.
definitions.
Let me
and
add.
We left it open-ended.
And just a
Yeah.
reminder, we are running against the clock and we do have various other questions from members that are participating. So Tyler, were you going to chime in?
I was going to just one last comment on, if we're talking specifically in the world of transportation, and you mentioned renewable natural gas specifically, the market isn't really considering that as an option for passenger vehicles. We're seeing most of that be battery electric and a little bit of hydrogen. So those are really the two different options. You may see some plug-in hybrid electric for that near zero component, but we don't expect that to be a significant portion for passenger vehicles. You may see it more in medium heavy duty fleets, but not in, the passenger market.
Can you say why
That's
not?
that's just where the market's going. Why not?
There's less models available. There's less stations available.
Things like,
So-
probably things like cost. It's a whole other set of infrastructure. You want to put charging stations everywhere. It's the same as putting gas filling stations everywhere. It's a big infrastructure thing, and it's just not where the market's going. At least not for light duty.
So with that, we'll go to the Honorable Damon Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your study, and I appreciate what you guys did. This is an excellent study. You answered one of my questions already. Is a mandate forthcoming? I see a mandate I just smell a mandate forthcoming for some particular reason because of what you guys required, how many stations we see in the future. So my question is also, did you guys look in, I see your heavy vehicles here. Did you guys look into rail when you did your study?
No.
So sorry, this particular initiative was just passenger electric
Okay.
vehicles. The broader clean technology program at SCAG is considering rail, and it will be included in the compendium. But I don't really want to speak to specifics today, but I would assure you that we are considering clean rail technologies.
Okay, and you probably touched about a little bit on everything with the previous question. Have you guys, I know this is SCAG, and did you guys touch, like, you said public, but did you touch school districts or water districts who have large amounts of parking and for charging stations like that?
So Taylor, do you want to talk about how our land use analysis looked at those
Yeah,
parcels?
so we looked at everything that wasn't single family residential. So all those sites are in that suitability analysis that we did.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Jenny Crosswhite.
Yeah, just two really quick questions. One is, in your recommendations for cities, you talk about reviewing your EV infrastructure and establishing or revising targets. Are there tools that cities that weren't part of this study are supposed to use in order to do that?
So
go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't go and figure out the target for every city in the SCAG region. Though there are a couple of, if anyone was interested, we could, there's a very brief methodology in our report on how we approached it that someone could probably use. Basically, we're just taking the 1.2 million from the state and proportioning it up by population and car ownership. And that was kind of how we arrived. And again, this is a target, not a mandate. And there are a lot of different ways to, there's a lot of assumptions built into that. And there are different ways of sort of approaching that. And again, we took the CEC's analysis and scaled it down.
All right.
And I would say like that recommendation is meant for something like a city procurement policy. So kind of looking at your procurement policy for your city fleet and vehicles over time, and then kind of working with our estimate. Again, it's a target, not a mandate or a requirement, but looking at your procurement policy and seeing, does that kind of help advance us towards this goal at the right pace? So something like that might be a tool. And I think different cities might have different methods of going about that.
Yeah, part of what I'm trying to figure out is how, in the process of trying to move towards zero or low emissions targets, how we don't compound inequity as a city that still has no public chargers, right? And so, and being one of the lower income cities in our entire county. So you're right, I'm sort of looking at the targets that are being used and the analysis that's being done here, and looking at the fact that we still haven't managed to get any. And so I'm just a little concerned about how, as we plan, I mean, I know that that was taken into consideration a little bit in this modeling, but like, how do we not leave entire communities and parts of communities behind, even if they wanted, they were able to scrape together money to buy an EV. If you can't charge it, then it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. So.
Yeah, I think that's when we couple of approaches, and again, this is easier on paper than in practice. That's where we think cities looking at properties that they own to put those first few in the ground. There's sort of a chicken and egg feedback loop where you start to see infrastructure. People are like, oh, I can go charge. I start buying EVs. That starts to create demand for other charging infrastructure. So that is one option. Now, again, cash very common with cities not having funding and to do this. So, working with different developers or public-private partnerships with different ownership strategies where maybe the city doesn't have to put a bunch of capital up front. Maybe there's options to finance that, for example, or you have a third party own and operate, lease the land and let them put in a charge area. We've outlined different ownership options in our report, so that's something that you can review. Everything would be sort of honestly case by case, site by site. And then, or it's, go and pursue different funding opportunities out there to help cover most of that capital cost, things like utility programs, things, the federal government's put out a lot of grant money for this. So there are options. It's highly competitive funding. So, but a lot of the funding out there does have priorities for low income or disadvantaged or just dysphoria communities. So that helps a little bit. Again, I understand it's one thing for me to say, yeah, go put something at your city hall or at a park, but without the funding or the partnerships or the resources, it's a lot harder to do in practice. And I think we recognize that, and it's something that will likely take time and help.
There's clearly a whole lot more conversation that needs to be had, but I know there's a lot of questions and we're running out of time. So
Right, we'll go on to the Honorable Oscar Ortiz.
Thank you. I really like the idea of the compendium. I think that's going to be really useful for our cities and our residents and everybody looking at the data for fuel prices and all that. Well, actually, I was going to ask, well, first, how often do you see that being updated?
That's a great question. I think it depends on, the budget that we have available, how deep of a dive we can go into that. I mean, my wish would be every plan cycle would be a good way to time it. But again, it kind of depends on the resources available within the agency.
Gotcha. Will that compendium also show fuel price trends?
Partially. So we are doing something called total cost of ownership analysis, which looks at, not just the purchase price, but the price to own and operate a vehicle. So in that aspect, we would be considering the price of fuels.
Okay. Yeah. And will it also include fueling station and charging station development trends throughout the state?
I think that we would be more looking at a snapshot of what's available and maybe doing more of a qualitative assessment of how quickly those can be deployed, but we wouldn't necessarily be looking at a trend the same way that IRB did using the regulation. I mean, I think that information is available in other places.
Okay. And then you mentioned you have some submissions that you've received already. Do you have any idea what kind of submissions you've received so far?
Yeah, so I think we've received about 10. A couple of them are vehicle companies, such as for instance, Volvo Group, I think submitted, and others might include vehicle to grid technologies. but we still need to kind of do a deep dive and look into them.
Okay.
But they will be included in the report.
Thank you.
Rachel? Or, I'm sorry, Sarah.
Hi, this is Sarah Jepson. I'm the planning director at SCAG, and just wanted to follow up with a couple of things that I think are relevant to this conversation. First, I wanted to recognize that Karen Sung is in the room, who is the chief of staff for Commissioner Hauk, who's with the California Public Utilities Commission. So we're really pleased to have her here today, and really pleased with the partnership and with the CPUC as we all move towards this transition. The second thing I wanted to point out is that I hear from all of you the interest in knowing more about all the resources available to support the deployment of the infrastructure. So we've developed some tools that say these would be great locations to put the infrastructure in order to support the need in your communities, but you're also going to have a challenge of, the money to actually make that infrastructure happen. And so we can certainly bring back another conversation about the resources that are available. There are a lot of them right now, right? We had a presentation here a couple months ago on the IIJA, which is the federal resources that are out there. There's a lot of resources available through the state as well. So I think it would be, that's a conversation I think we can set up for a future date to talk about those resources that are going to be available. And my third thing is just that we will make sure to invite Allison back. There's a lot in this area. We've, talked about electrification today, and I know that this committee, though, has been very much interested in those other near zero technologies. And as we develop that compendium, it will explore some of those, and we'll make sure to have more conversations here on those other technologies. Let's add that to the conversation. And thanks again to Karen for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. Just a couple more questions in-house, and then we'll go to online. Mr. Brock?
I had a couple of comments and questions. So right now, how are we considering hydrogen versus electric in terms of clean?
So as Taylor mentioned, for passenger hydrogen.
For passenger cars.
So for passenger hydrogen isn't really where the market's going. But as I mentioned, we did kick off a study to look at fueling and charging options for medium and heavy duty vehicles. And I think in that market, hydrogen plays a much larger role. So we're looking at, different travel behaviors of different truck markets, kind of understanding where they stop, where they fuel now, and where they might have the potential to fuel in the future. And then looking at kind of the pros and cons of both technologies for different markets. Again, we're going to let the user decide what works best for their own operational needs. But I think for the heavy duty sector, it's much more of an ongoing, or I'd say, I think hydrogen offers a lot of potential for the heavy duty sector.
Okay, because I can tell you this anecdotal evidence. My mother has a hydrogen car, and her charging station, her fuel station, was out of hydrogen for the last 5 days. They finally recovered on the app yesterday. She had me go with her to the hydrogen station because the fuel pump connection is hard for her to manage. She's 95. Her observation, first of all, there were 10 cars in line already that were swooping in from all parts of West LA because it was the only hydrogen station for miles around. And that's a real issue. So my mother was talking about a class action lawsuit to recover the money for her Mirai because she can't fuel it. And she had a lot of frustration yesterday. When I talked to other people, they had similar frustrations that if you only have one fuel station per city or less, one tank, it's not tenable at some point. I had a couple other questions. People talked about low scoring areas. And even though I'm in a very dense urban city, the problem is that we had a huge fight 1.5 years ago because Tesla wanted to put in a charging station, one of the largest they had put in California, and we sell a lot of Teslas in Santa Monica. However, one of our fellow council members was furious at that, because said that needed to be housing to help satisfy our RENA numbers. So how do you satisfy RENA and the conflict between absolutely needing EV stations. But how do you manage both when you only have, we have no open land in Santa Monica. So we don't have that land, and we're trying to sell, or not sell, but give our government land to 100% affordable projects. But 73% of my residents live in apartments. Most of those apartments are older complexes where they, even though the state law says now they have to allow electric car chargers, there's no physical way to put them in. How do you satisfy that conflict between high RENA standards, for instance, in my city where it's almost 9,000 units, versus electrifying the city enough that people can use charging stations, because they won't buy electric cars, as someone said a minute ago, if they realize that there's no way to charge them.
Yeah, I think those are really great questions, and that's
And
definitely
you
the
have no
challenge we're
answer.
facing. I mean, I think one of the resources I could point to is the REACH codes and building standards that Taylor mentioned. You know, as you're developing something new, and I think in a lot of cases, if you're doing a retrofit or triggering that permit requirement, you're going to be required to upgrade to what the new standard is. And so a lot of those codes are requiring new development and retrofits to make structures EV ready. So I would say maybe it's a developer's problem to figure out the most cost-effective way to
But there is
include
another issue
space
there,
within the building.
because if you start losing
Yeah.
your previous housing, your older housing in the city, as you build the new housing, you're losing affordability. And so that retrofit or that new 5 or 6 story apartment house will destroy 6 to 8 former apartment houses. And those people lose their housing in our city and they're forced to go elsewhere. So there's that trade-off isn't a good trade-off.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is really a holistic look at, you know, how EVs can be incorporated into neighborhoods. That is one of the ideas that we've talked about for future program development, looking at electric vehicles and specifically in multi-unit dwellings and really high density areas. So I think like a deeper dive and a much more holistic look at some of those challenges would be a great next
Just
step.
last word on that. I think that's really important, because you don't want to end up trading residents of your city for new buildings just to build new buildings, because maybe they get an EV station or maybe they're more modern, but the rents go from $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month to $4,500 a month. And all those residents are forced out to other outlying cities because they can't live in my city any longer.
It's a similar challenge to any amenity that you bring to a city, right? If you're bringing parks or, you know, or electric vehicle upgrades, there's always
But it's easier if a city has a lot of open space, or they are in an area where someone mentioned, for instance, train yards and electric, electric yards, et cetera. And so my city doesn't have any of that. West Hollywood, down the road from me, has none of that. We're jammed, and we want electric stations. And we also want our residents to be able to have affordability, and I'll stop.
Very interesting challenges. With that, we'll go to the Honorable Elaine Lister.
It's true.
It has to show.
Thank you. Just one really fast, maybe it's a stupid question. I don't own an electric vehicle, but and we speak of level 2 chargers, DCFC chargers, et cetera. Is there a universal charging standard? It's my understanding that Tesla charges different than another EV vehicle. Is there a universal standard that will fit all cars that are EV?
So Taylor?
No.
Yeah, so
and how do we
2
mandate for which car that we are now?
So, and I wanted, yeah, this is a classic Apple versus Android situation, but applied to cars. The good news
How do we resolve that
is that
in all of this?
So level 2 level 2 charging is standardized. And so let me just review the levels real quick. Level 1 is you plug in a wall outlet and you get 3 miles an hour. Level 2 is sort of what most of the chargers you see out there are, and that will charge an EV in like 4 to 8 hours. The DC fast charger is, when you can charge in like under 30 minutes. So just so we're clear there. Level 1 and level 2 is standardized across all vehicles. So that's solved. Level 3 is the Apple Android issue. Tesla's got their own thing. And then most of the rest of the industry in North America is what's called CCS1, and then the Nissan Leaf is on CHAdeMO. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. But we see the industry coalescing around CCS1. That is where, and how do you mandate this? It's, this becomes probably at federal policy level, to be perfectly honest, on making a decision and moving forward. You see that in the bipartisan infrastructure bill funding. You have to be open access, which basically means CCS1, except when now Ford pulled a surprise on everyone. It says they're going to start including Tesla chargers. So I honestly do not know what is going to happen. You are in crystal ball territory. This is right now being driven by the vehicle manufacturers and the charging manufacturers. And yeah, it may just be Apple and Android, but for cars. I don't have a better answer for you today.
And thank you. And I just, as we talk about installing,
And one exciting thing, like as a result of the infrastructure bill that Taylor mentioned, so previously Tesla stations were just for Tesla vehicles. In order for them to have access to that funding, they kind of saw the carrot there. And now their stations are going to be opening up to multiple vehicles. They might not be changing the plug type, which is silly,
well,
but
they're
still
adding adapters.
They're adding adapters. So
they're adding adapters to some of their charging stations, so anyone can use them, except
So the
Nissan
point
Leaf,
is,
which will unfortunately be in trouble.
the carrot of the money is kind of causing the market, is helping shape the market, which is the role of government, to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, the bleeding edge of technology will always get us there. All right, we're going to go ahead to those participating remotely at posted agendas. Do we have any comments from members of this committee at those locations?
Vice Chair, I'm not seeing any raised hands on Zoom by our members.
Do we have any virtual attendees other than board members?
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Definitely a very, very new subject that's in flux, and we'll have to follow it and have this come back. Maybe it's a single item on the agenda, because I can tell that we can spend hours talking about this, and if it was that easy to solve, I guarantee you we wouldn't all be elected. Somebody would have already done it.
Well, you've all had some great ideas, and I assure you, we're looking into it as much as we can. So thank you so much for contributing to the conversation.
Thank you.
And thanks, Taylor, for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you both. We will go now to agenda item number 12, Connect SoCal 2024 Policy Development Framework Updates. This one is scheduled for about 40 minutes. We're already running roughly 25 minutes behind. So we'll try to be as succinct on this as we can. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and allow public comment. Is there anybody in the room who wishes to make public comment on this item? Do we have any remote attendees or virtual attendees that want to make public comment on this item?
I am not seeing any raised hands on Zoom.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, I will go ahead and ask Camille Guariba, Senior Regional Planner, to provide today's presentation. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. Camille Guariba, Senior Regional Planner with the Planning Strategy Department. And I'm here to talk to you about the Policy Development Framework and an update to it. So adopted in June 2022 by the Regional Council, the Policy Development Framework for Connect SoCal 2024 documents the policy direction and development of several emerging issues and policy priorities, and details the establishment of, and also detailed the establishment of the special Connect SoCal 2024 subcommittees. In March of this year, staff presented proposed updates to the policy development framework to the Joint Policy Committee by introducing regional planning policies as a part of that framework. The regional planning policies carry on the intent of what was referred to as the core vision in Connect SoCal 2020 and incorporates more recent policy direction and discussions. So that's what today's presentation is about, the update to the policy development framework with draft regional planning policies included. So the regional planning policies provide guidance for integrating land use and transportation planning to realize the vision of Connect SoCal. They have been refined over several planning cycles to promote multimodal transportation investments and local development that aligns with the regional growth vision. Policies also incorporate recent discussions and direction from SCAG's Regional Council, policy committees, and special subcommittees. They will serve as a resource for transportation agencies and local jurisdictions to refer to specific policies to demonstrate alignment with the regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy when seeking resources from state or federal grant programs. As a reminder, here is the draft vision and goals that we shared with various stakeholder groups and to each subcommittee and committee last summer. The vision is for a healthy, accessible, and connected region for a more resilient and equitable future. We then have our 4 goal areas with specifics on mobility, communities, environment, and the economy. And the regional planning policies add detail to our vision and goals to further articulate what we want the region to be and how we want to achieve the vision for the future. And you can see the details in the draft policy development framework attached to the staff report today. In refining the regional planning policies, staff identified several policy categories under each goal area. And those policy areas marked with an asterisk on this slide are new for Connect SoCal 2024. In the next several slides, we highlight example policies from each category. And considering the interests of this committee, I will jump to the environment goal area starting on slide 11. And so here are a few examples from our environment goal area of our draft regional planning policies. The first in the sustainable development category with promoting sustainable development and best practices in that regard. Air quality, improving the air quality throughout the region and reducing air pollutants and greenhouse gas emissions. Clean transportation. This touches on the topic that was just discussed in the previous item, really looking at supporting the deployment of zero emission transportation systems and near zero emission technology. A couple other examples in our environmental category, natural and agricultural land preservation, prioritizing climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience of natural and agricultural lands in the region. And the last example under the environment category, climate resilience. That's to prioritize the most vulnerable populations and communities subject to climate hazards to help people, places, and infrastructure that are most at risk. And so if you look at our staff report, we have about, I think, almost 90 draft regional planning policies, and I hope you have a chance to take a look at those during this month. And we have refined the draft regional policies through feedback from several stakeholder groups, including but not limited to the ones shown here on slide 15. And so we are currently looking for additional feedback on the revised draft policies from policy committee members. And then in July next month, we'll be seeking approval to update the policy development framework with the regional planning policies in advance of the fall draft release of Connect SoCal 2024. And then after the policy development framework is adopted next month, we will be developing implementation strategies that will identify specific actions that SCAG and partners can take to support the regional planning policies. And these will be included in the draft release of Connect SoCal 2024 this fall. And so Thank you, and I appreciate any questions or feedback you might have on the regional planning policies. And I also have the support of Ryan Wolf here, who could answer specific questions about any of the environment policies.
Thank you, Camille. We will now go to questions or comments from members of this committee. Seeing none in chambers, Madam Clerk, do we have any virtual or online?
I am not seeing any virtual raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, very thorough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now go to agenda item number 13, Connect SoCal Regional Growth Vision and Local Data Exchange Evaluation. Do we have any members of the public wishing to make public comment on this item here in chambers? No? He's saying steel base. I don't know. He's throwing baseball signs. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody online?
I don't see any raised hands on Zoom.
Okay. Be none, we're going to go ahead and have Kevin Kane, Regional Principal Planner for SCAG, provide today's presentation. Kevin?
So this is Sarah Jepson, the Planning Director. We had this item at 2 committees today. So I will just fill for a little bit longer because Kevin is running into the room.
Thank you.
But this is a key element of Connect SoCal, the growth vision for the plan. And so Kevin has just been over at our CEHD committee, providing an update on where we are in this process. And as he's catching his breath, he will then provide that same presentation here for you all today. So thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my boss for stalling. Much appreciated. As Sarah mentioned, this presentation is about the Connect SoCal Regional Growth Vision and Local Data Exchange. As you probably heard in the last talk about regional planning policies, we're actually kind of in the home stretch for a lot of Connect SoCal development. We do aim to release a draft plan by about the beginning of October. So you've seen a lot of the policies from the last presentation. And on the technical side, we've aggregated a lot of the projects from the county transportation commissions. We've put together the list of federal projects, and we're ready to begin running this giant travel demand model shortly, which is basically going to predict 2050 to the best extent you can, and see how we're doing in a long-range regional plan. This presentation is about the land use and growth input to that process. A lot of this we've shared up, especially next door to CEHD, a little bit less to this committee. So please feel free to kind of ask questions or stop or well, I guess probably afterwards as needed. Hopefully I can do justice to some of the details here. But we're sharing this now because this is probably the last time we'll have an opportunity to discuss it in a little more detail before that draft plan release coming up in October. We want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row, the messaging right, so that we can kind of work to get a plan across the finish line eventually. So we kind of finalized our 2050 growth projections a couple of months ago, did an evaluation of that, sent it through our technical working groups and up to the policy committees just as an information a couple of months ago. The tagline, I guess the title of the mid-range scenario, we had a high, a medium, and a low, but now what we have is a modified version of the mid for going forward with. We called it slower growth, steady improvement. And that really reflected kind of the nature of where long-range planning is to a degree here from the demographic side. It's less about new people, new growth specifically per se, and a higher share of it is about quality of life and kind of ensuring the best for existing residents and the existing place here. So per statute, the land use and growth part of the plan is called the Forecasted Regional Development Pattern. That's from SB 375 from 2008. And we've got something of a vision that helps us kind of bridge between local plans and state targets. It consists of our sustainability-oriented approach toward land use and growth. I'll go into that growth prioritization scale in just a second, plus the local data exchange, which was a comprehensive outreach process we did. So evaluating this takes the collective effort of everybody, and we're just now starting to run these big models I mentioned. But what we've shared with our technical working group and what I have here for you today is a more lightweight evaluation. It speaks to the greenhouse gas targets to a degree, but also reflects some of these key regional policies, housing the region, 15-minute communities, priority areas, and sustainable development, and kind of shows how we're building on Connect SoCal 2020 to get there. So first, for the regional growth projection. In the last plan, we projected a 19% population growth, 25% household growth, and 19% employment growth between 2016 and 2045. Right now, we're looking at 2019 to 2050, but it's a pretty similar 30-year. It's not too bad to put it side by side in a bar chart, I guess I would say. We developed our preliminary 2024 plan numbers with the help of a couple of consultants and also a panel of 15 experts, and sent them to policy committees in early 2022. Note that now we're expecting about half only of the population growth that we anticipated would happen 4 years ago. So a pretty substantial change in the region's population outlook. We're expecting only slightly less household increase or housing increase than the last plan, and a fair bit lower job or employment increase. You can grow jobs without people to a degree, higher labor force participation, staying in the workforce longer, multiple adults living together in a household who work. So those things happen to a degree, and in migrants who tend to be a little bit more working age, that tends here to happen here is we're an immigrant landing point in large part too, but only to a point. So you can't maintain that same job growth without at least having some population growth. So during this local data exchange process, which ran from about February 2022, and the deadline for input was December 2nd, we met with 164 cities, got data back from 148 of them, and got growth forecast data specifically back from 132 of them. So this is where we're at after putting everything together, stitching together everybody's input. And you can see we're a little bit higher actually on all counts, on households, employment, and then we take the household information, kind of crank it through some demographic modeling and get an updated population figure. So this checks out technically overall. One of the limited tools that we have to look at 2050 is this concept of balance, ensuring that there are enough people for the jobs, that there is enough housing for the people in 2050. And we're well within kind of the initial low and high ranges that our expert panel set out. An important piece is that the change to employment was in the same direction as the change in housing. Usually we get more jobs and less housing. This time they're both increased, so the balance is a little bit improved. So that's an important factor here. But especially noteworthy is the increase in the household projection following local review. You can see the locally reviewed bar just a little bit higher than our expert panel's preliminary forecast, which was already fairly optimistic and taking into account the little uptick in production we've seen over the past few years and a lot of state, local pro-housing policies, more recognition of the shortage, what have you. I'll share that I had a meeting with about 6 other demographers across the state on Tuesday, and one of them has been doing this since the mid-60s. He reiterated that this is the first time he's seen this happen in a region in California in his nearly 60 years of practice here, is that after going to local review, the housing number goes up across the whole region. Usually it goes down a little bit. This time it went up. So this is really a credit to a lot of the strong work being done by local jurisdictions in Southern California. So the bottom line is that the aggregate view of all the cities is even higher than our experts. So that's encouraging. One other point here that I'll share is the timing of it. In our last plan, we anticipated that in the first half of it, roughly by 2035, we'd see about 837,000 new households. In this plan, that number is closer to 1.1 million. So not only is there a relatively strong amount, but it's a little bit more front-loaded. And that's important because we're only accommodating fairly modest population growth, but we know there's a big backlog, kind of existing need, the effects of past housing undersupply. So Connect SoCal's kind of bones, so to speak, in the form of the forecast, already kind of get us in this direction here. And that's all right because you look at the 2030s, late 2030s, 2040s, the age structure, fertility, and everything globally is not indicating that we'll be growing fast then, to say the least. So those were the regional results, but we have to get this down to smaller spatial scales, all the way down to a parcel level. You've got 5.1 million parcels in Southern California. But we use these 4 scales to kind of guide our process here to get to this forecasted regional development pattern. None of them are the forecasted regional development pattern. This is just kind of how we talk about it, how we operate it. I'm sure as Sarah is the staff lead here, that you've heard the phrase, this is more of a compass than a roadmap, which I use every single time she's in the room. In any case, total regional growth is more related to global, national, state, economic and demographic trends. When you get to these smaller scales, the jurisdiction level, we have cities of under 1,000 people here. We have cities of nearly 4 million people here. They range a lot. But once you get to these smaller scales, the jurisdiction and the transportation analysis zone, or TAZ, basically you can think of it as a neighborhood scale. This is really a little bit more illustrative, because the knowledge to know what happens in a TAZ or in a neighborhood is really site specific. What are the local conditions here? Is something likely to be built here? What's the underlying zoning? Is this high rise? Is this pediment building? Is this exclusively, a hazard area or something like that? That's where we really rely on the local knowledge to kind of flesh it out more. So what these TAZs are, what these neighborhood level data are, is they're not prescriptive. They're more a tool to articulate how regional strategies could be reflected at the neighborhood scale. So we have to put together this forecasted regional development pattern, and it has to hit the greenhouse gas target. And also we wanted to advance all these other regional policies that have been worked on here. So again, it's not specific to a scale. It's a little bit more about the policies, the strategies, and the process that we use to get there. So we start with the preliminary forecasted regional development pattern. That's SCAG staff's effort using all of the available data that we have, the past plan, the demographic projection, et cetera, to put together a first cut, basically. Then we put that out for local review. Again, we met with about 165 of the 197 local jurisdictions, a little bit lower than last time, I must say. It was a little bit harder to get to folks. I'm preaching to the choir here, I'm sure, in terms of having staff shortages and a lot of competing priorities, especially in growth, land use, and GIS because of the housing element to a degree. But in any case, after that, what we've stitched together now, we're calling the locally reviewed version. You can see a little bit more detail about these if you or maybe some staffs are more interested in that. This goes through really extensive modeling kind of development. What's the population by age? What's the income? What's the school enrollment? What are the household types? That goes into our draft plan. We model it, see how it performs, and put it out there in October. After a formal public comment period, we hope to get a final version. So, how do we do this? How do we actually match some of these high-level regional components with the local component? In prior cycles, what we had done is a very dry, technical, preliminary approach, I guess I would say. As policy neutral as you can be for allocating growth for the first cut for cities to see. We would meet with everybody, and then we would reshuffle it. We would say, oh, let's put a little bit more growth in a high quality transit area. Let's take it out of a high wildfire area. Let's reshuffle it around. Let's keep some of the things the same, but let's do some reshuffling exercise. We decided to flip that this time and actually embed a lot of what we had done in past regional plans, specifically Connect SoCal 2020, and put a vision of what that would look like in front of local jurisdictions for their review and for their editing. So what we have now, post local jurisdiction review, is what we can run with. So the hope is that that really integrates the local vision a lot better. So what we did to start off is, again, we assessed pretty much everything we could in terms of what's the remaining general plan capacity, what are key entitlements that already exist. To the extent that we had RENA and housing element data, we had a fairly small share of that fully complete at the time we developed this, but we did our best to integrate if there's any additional supply, coming from RENA. And then, we basically matched supply and demand here. What's the anticipated growth and how much space or land is there across the whole region? And we did this using, I'd say, a growth we had these two kind of principles from the prior plans that we updated just a little bit: priority development areas and then green region or resource areas. These are the areas that are generally more consistent or perhaps generally less consistent with regional plan goals and as a corollary to vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So as a refresher, PDAs or priority development areas, that includes things like neighborhood mobility areas, kind of complete communities. I think you probably heard about 15-minute communities moments ago, aspects of that. and say transit priority areas, a pretty narrow definition of major transit across the region, just as an example. In terms of the areas that we try to decrease, but not totally preclude growth, we have this list of 13 green region resource areas that includes some places like tribal nations, military installations, farmland that aren't really a part of the urban growth discussion, too much, but also a lot that is called out specifically in statute that we need to consider in a regional plan, and also a lot consistent with some of the regional planning policies as well. So these are kind of the ingredients that we put together before we met with local jurisdictions. So what's the recipe? Well, this scale kind of provides a really, really, really rough guide, a first cut of a guide to compare areas across, one of the most diverse regions I think you could see in the country as far as land use is concerned. And it goes from kind of the highest step to the lowest step here. As a general observation, there's not too much dark green on this map overall. The Skag region is especially vast. The priority development areas that I mentioned before probably comprise something on the order of about 10% of the region's land area, if not less. So what we did here is we basically kind of filled in order. We filled the growth forecast in order to the extent there was capacity. So what we did is kind of a maximization, I would say, a maximization of these plan goals, and then put it out for local jurisdictions and ask them to review it. So this bridging kind of between the local and the overall regional growth is probably best shown here in this data verification form. This is what we asked cities to update. And on the one hand, we asked them to update kind of, hey, are we using your most up-to-date general plan information? Do you have more entitlements to share with us? But also, do you have concepts in your city for what neighborhood mobility looks like for places that have low-speed streets, non-single occupant vehicle opportunities, things in close proximity to each other? How does that look like in your city? Because we know it's probably different than the regional average or than another city. And then we also asked local jurisdictions to update the growth numbers specifically. We were a little bit sparse, actually, because, again, nobody has an exact crystal ball, but you can get a lot with households and total jobs in 2035 and 2050. So 10% of jurisdictions just said, okay, accepted our preliminary numbers, reviewed them, and said they're consistent with their view as well. 56% made some revisions. Some were very small to an entitlement here or some units here and there or a job center that they anticipate going in somewhere else. And about 1/3 provided no forecast input. So we weren't able to get detailed forecast input from about 1/3 of them, in which case we kind of default to our the preliminary. So we also had within here kind of an opportunity to elaborate, and this was really helpful, I'd say, because it was true to the spirit of a local data exchange. It allowed us to actually kind of have a conversation about, hey, what does your other priority development area look like? If you have a little bit more growth than we had anticipated in, say, a high wildfire risk area, what kind of local strategies do you have? Do you have home hardening or egress strategies or things like that that kind of fit the spirit of the regional strategy, but may not be reflected in our kind of 10,000-foot view that we took initially here? So that was, generally pretty productive process. And that brings us here to evaluating, I guess I'd say, a path toward sustainable land use in 2050. So this is probably making your head spin already to a certain degree, because there are tons of inputs, tons of pieces, and tons of acronyms. So how do we actually, go ahead and evaluate this? Well, let's start with one here in the middle, which is cognitively pretty straightforward. How much of the housing in Southern California is in APDA, is in any of these priority development areas? Well, in 2019, 59% was. In our plan, the new growth, 65.2% of it would be. So what that does is that gradually moves up the total amount of homes and thus people who are in a priority area by 1.3%. So, not a huge amount. These are marginal. You could see kind of the inverse there with 0 to 1 green region areas. But we also have a little bit more honed version this time, because we can say, well, what if you're in multiple priority areas? What if you have kind of the advantage of some neighborhood connectivity plus transit plus something else? So that share kind of increases as well, and leads to an increase by 2050. as you see there. So again, these are kind of marginal, but I would say too that when we look back at Connect SoCal 2020, land use represented roughly the same contribution to greenhouse gas emissions reductions as either congestion pricing or EV charging infrastructure. So where we place ourselves, how we have this regional pattern was actually pretty important to meeting our GHG targets. And we can share those stats as well if you need to. Conditions are different, but that's again, Connect SoCal 2020. So this is really the last piece here. How did we do in terms of improving upon the last plan in this iterative fashion? So what we've done here is to compare the last plan to this preliminary approach, which I said is a little bit of a maximization, to what we got back from local jurisdictions. And again, it shows a pretty similar pattern. So if we look at this first cluster of bar charts, in the last plan, 35.8% of growth was in these kind of gold standard areas, right? The multiple priority areas and no green region. We upped that a little bit. We were able to up that a little bit in the preliminary version, and it's a little bit lower in the locally reviewed plan. But the reason is it's a lot more realistic. It's a lot more linked to the potential for implementation. We're only as good as the 10,000 foot view plus the process that we have to get the 0 foot view. So we're thrilled to see that overall. And I'll skip through the county slide because we can get into more detail, and there's even more certainly in the technical working group version of this. But by and large, what we're seeing is locally reviewed Connect SoCal 2024 that is quite a bit better by most measures than the final Connect SoCal 2020 as far as land use and growth on these measures. Now, that's not all of the story. I'll also direct your attention. I can't remember the EEC packet number, but there, I believe, is a receive and file item about the local data exchange survey. We also, this wasn't all numbers. We also had a qualitative component when we went out to discuss with cities. In particular, we wanted to kind of understand a little bit more about their land use policies and strategies, transportation, environmental, public health, equity components as we roll that into the plan. We had a little under 50% participation in that. Again, limited staff capacity and budget limitations were kind of noted as some of the reasons why cities sometimes can struggle to link to regional plans, to SCSs, for example. As far as we had an interesting question toward the end of it, why do housing production goals remain unmet? Most common responses were a lack of land, a lack of developer interest, a lack of funding for affordable housing, and public opposition. So probably preaching to the choir very much in this room here. So just to kind of wrap up, where we are with the land use and growth portion going into Connect SoCal, I would say it's especially strong in housing. Again, I think my colleague, a demographer who has been doing this since the mid-60s, saying that he's never seen the numbers go up on the housing side was rather telling, especially how they're a little bit more front-loaded too. There were near universal county and region level improvements on this very basic measure, against Connect SoCal 2020. We won't know really the full details until we do all of the fancy modeling. And what we're doing so far is to proceed with the local input, the local data exchange input for running with the draft plan for the next piece. Hopefully we've had a good transparent process here as well. The numbers have been available, for review for folks to note or to comment on, should they feel it. We've done that mostly through our technical working group and its website, which I've put in here and which we've shared out as well. And really the next steps are the draft plan release in October. So the last point I'd close on is that, again, it's to a degree a compass, not a roadmap. We have a very process-based forecasted regional development pattern. We have limited ability to see exactly what 2050 is going to be like. But this is how we go about doing that, using kind of a regional growth vision and the local data exchange side of things. So thank you.
And I was going to announce that as well. I'll start from the beginning. I will now entertain comments from members of the EEC. Just a reminder, if a member of the body attending remotely but is not on a notice location may observe but may not participate in discussion. The other comment I was going to make is for those of you attending remotely, please mute your microphones unless you are speaking. There seems to be some background noise feeding in. So we will first go here to in-room. I see no comment. Here we go, a real quick one, Mr. Brock.
Just something I'm curious about. What is the average, and all the new households that are coming, what's the average size of each household?
Oh, I don't have a square footage number for you.
No, not square
Yeah.
footage. How many bodies in each household?
Oh, average
Because
hou-
in my city, the amount of bodies per household is decreasing rapidly. We're down to 1.8.
Goodness, 1.8. Wow.
So that plays a part, I think, in our projections.
Region-wide, 2.98 is where we're at right now, which is a bit of a drop from before. And by 2050, down to 2.64 for the regional average.
Is that in this report?
That is in the companion report to the technical working group. I'm happy to share that and provide.
Because I think
yeah.
that's relevant too,
Mhm.
is as we build more housing, how many people are occupying that housing?
It has such a myriad ramifications too. You've got smaller household sizes, they travel differently, they pool trips less. So it's really a multifaceted process, but
Thank you.
That's one we've put in. So.
And Kevin, if I may, the results for the report that you're talking about is item number 8 in your packet, which starts on page 94.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Any additional questions? Thank you. We'll now go to those participating remotely, either at remote locations or
Mr.
virtual.
Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I missed you. Mr. Alexander.
Just to follow up, I'm from San Bernardino County, and how did you, the per household, I know in my city, or my city, that's not even close. How did you guys manage those stats?
Manage to get them or manage to get them so low?
Because my city, I know my city, there's nowhere in the world, not even 2. It's probably somewhere, if I just base it on my neighborhood association, it's somewhere up in like 4 to 5.
It really does vary pretty dramatically across the region. Part of our regional data platform has this tool called SoCal Atlas, and people per household is one of the data points right in there. So you can check pretty readily. Yeah, it definitely varies. It's gone down a little bit region-wide. Again, smaller families, lower fertility rates, but there's migration too. You know, if more family-friendly folks are moving to the Inland Empire, which certainly is something we observe, then you'd probably have higher household sizes there than in, just for example, Santa Monica, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Double check here. Okay, now we're going to go to remote locations and virtual participations. Madam Clerk, I'll let you do the traffic direction on that one.
Yes, we have member Britt Huff with the raised hand.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much. An amazing amount of data here, and I'm sure leaves us all as breathless as you are. So I've one question on that LDX data review and verification form. Am I right that this is the opportunity that our city staff had to participate in this in terms of review and revising, for example, the TAS and the jurisdiction levels, that they could go online and have input?
That's correct. We rolled out this process, the local data exchange, in February of 2023. Soft rolled it out, had every piece of it available as of May 2022, and the deadline for input was December 2nd. We had a fair bit of non-response follow-up after that. I can't recall offhand if the city of Rolling Hills Estates, I assume that based on the background, participated in that or not, but that's basically the form that was the final checkpoint of that process.
And that's the one that you had about 50% return on?
The form itself had lower return than the data, in part because how we requested it is we're happy to get anything, frankly, from local jurisdictions when it comes to something, because they're volunteering their time to help the regional plan in large part. We try to make it as useful as possible by having some tools, bells and whistles, etc. But the data verification form rate was a little bit lower than the input rate. So there were fewer cities who put pen to paper, signed off, and made it entirely formal. We pushed for that as much as we could, because it helps us. But we did get more input than we did get forms back, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, any additional online comments or questions?
No, Vice Chair, I'm not seeing any other members with a
Okay,
raised hand.
we'll go to our last one in chambers, the Honorable Lauren Meister.
Thank you. I guess I would like to see a list of the jurisdictions that completed and those that didn't complete. And if it is a matter of resources, what can we do here, at SCAG to get cities to participate? Because it seems to me it's an important thing for us to help them to do.
We're able to grab the list. My recollection is that it's appended to the January 2023 CEHD agenda as an attachment. I have to double check on that. The virtual environment helped, but it also hurt to a degree. We were able to reach folks with fewer resources, but it wasn't quite the same in terms of actually meeting one-on-one and discussing. Another factor is that this version of Connect SoCal was not associated with the development of a regional housing needs allocation. So I think there was definitely more interest last time when RENA was at stake. The stakes were higher for cities. Also, the housing element was due roughly the same time that this was going on. And that's certainly a very mandatory compliance task, whereas this is a little bit more voluntary in nature. So we tried to pair it with giving a lot of tools through the regional data platform as well, including basically a full template for doing a general plan update and the public outreach surrounding it. So we tried a little bit, but I think, kind of incentivizing that further in this process next time, but also for other outreach efforts is certainly a topic. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kevin. Great presentation. Oh, got another one here sideways.
I apologize.
Can you do me a put it this way?
Put this
There
way.
you go.
No,
They end up
I
this way and
apologize.
it
This way is very
becomes hard
difficult.
for me to
I'm
see
so
it.
sorry. Just, I noticed in your, so that you're using the term household percentage, and that was a little confusing at first because you're really speaking of housing units. Is that correct?
Yes, I see. Yeah.
Which in a household, I think of maybe well, I mean, they're slightly different, but I just want to be sure I'm understanding correctly. You're talking about the percentage of housing units, growth and need, et cetera.
So this is always a bone to pick. They're very similar, but have some important differences. Housing units don't generate travel demand. Households do. Because it's the people who live in them.
Sure.
So generally speaking, and there's some debate as to this, but households plus vacant units equals total housing units. So vacancy rates, something in the neighborhood of 3 to 5% overall, definitely range widely across the region. But we forecast households because the main purpose is travel demand modeling. But it's very related to housing units. And when we do develop like ARENA or do other housing unit targeting types of things, we would kind of translate that mostly with the vacancy rate.
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you very much once again. Moving forward, we go to the chair's report. I would take this opportunity to ask all of you to join me in welcoming our newest ECC members, our Archbishop, Paul Courtney, and Stephanie Virgin. Look forward to working with all of you, and please feel free to reach out to any of us. Happy to have you on board. The update on the Connect SoCal outreach, SCAC has concluded the in-person and virtual workshops for Connect SoCal. These were held throughout the region in April and May of 2023. These workshops provided an opportunity for stakeholders to participate and share their thoughts on the pressing issues impacting Southern California. Stakeholders can still contribute to Connect SoCal by taking a brief survey before June 4th, and will be entered for a chance to win an iPad for those that participate, or other gift card or a gift card. Last but not least, SCAG will present the highlights and findings from that Connect SoCal outreach to the Regional Council next month. And we'll also ask the Executive Administration and Regional Council to provide an update to the Connect SoCal Development Framework based on feedback received at the May Policy Committee meeting. So with that, we will move on to staff reports. To my left, to my right.
Thank you, Vice Chair. This is Rachel Wagner. I'm a Senior Government Affairs Officer with SCAG, and I just have two quick updates. The first one is on our SoCal Greenprint Technical Advisory Committee. We are in the process of finalizing the makeup of this committee, and they will begin meeting this summer to advise staff on the development of the Greenprint tool and to ensure its alignment with the approved RAMP policy framework. A report on recommendations for the Greenprint tool will be brought to this committee and the Regional Council this fall. And my second update is just a note on the RENA reform process and its schedule. The California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, is developing recommendations to reform the RENA process, which will be provided in a report to the state legislature by December 31st. And this process is one that involves stakeholder engagement, and SCAG is currently seeking input from jurisdictions, stakeholders, and members of the public on the draft RENA reform recommendations through a brief survey. In addition to the survey, we will be holding a public listening session on June 22nd, and a second date will be announced. Stakeholders can also submit comments at housing@scag.ca.gov, and that's an email they can send the feedback to. All survey responses and comments will be due by June 30th, and SCAG will present its draft recommendations for review and approval to our CEHD committee at a special meeting in August, and then to the Regional Council on September 7th. That concludes my updates. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Moving on to future agenda items, I did have a request by Mr. Ortiz. Would you like to voice that on the microphone?
Yes, just wanted to see if we can get an update on the Salton Sea talks with Salton Sea Authority to see where they're moving on that. Another one that I thought of as well was the negotiations with IID and the water, Colorado River water, to see how that's going to be impacting the different sections of our region.
So that would be more like the Colorado Water Users Organization. That would be a little bit more inclusive than just IID.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Just so we will be working on an annual outlook for the committee. The Executive Administration Committee meets at the end of June to talk about overall agency kind of priorities for policy issues to address over the coming year. And through that conversation, we'll work with the chairs and vice chairs of each of the committees and develop these outlooks. So we'll incorporate the idea of here and the other ideas that have been brought to us, as well as the key presentations we need for Connect SoCal and our other policy work here at the agency. We'll put that all into an outlook, and it will be updated after the June retreat, so that when we come back to this committee I guess we're back here in, it would probably be in September when you'd see a full outlook for the next year.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sarah,
Thank you.
for purposes of this committee, could you explain what Outlook is other than our mail? So that they understand what you're referring
Sure.
to.
In fact, on page, let's see what page of our packet is that, Rachel, we have included a list of the proposed and planned agenda items for each of the.
On page 58, you will find our current outlook for agenda items.
58, and as you move along, 58 kind of explains our approach. And then when you get to 62, there's this table that has generally the quarters that, we have throughout the year and the different items that we'll bring forward. As you'll notice in this handout, we have reached the end of the year of our planning year. And so when we go back and have our EAC retreat at the end of June, we'll plan for, again, the next year. So we will be looking from September to July for the next year and outlining the various agenda items to bring forward.
Okay.
So you can see the nice thing about this and having, is you can see all we've accomplished, right? These are the items that you had proposed to bring forward and the presentations that we've had here. And so you can see this, and we appreciate that there's been a lot of policy conversations here at the committee, and I've appreciated your input. And then some of the items will then move into the next year, and we'll bring that back to you in September.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any additional future agenda items? Okay, do we have any announcements from members of the committee? Turn on your microphone so that they can hear us. Little touch the green bar. There we go.
There we go. This is just a comment on the EV stations, the superchargers, et cetera. Out in the city of Barstow, the hub of the West, at the heart of the high desert in San Bernardino County. And that's right, you're San Bernardino City, okay, in San Bernardino County. Tesla is, as we speak, they're installing 100 supercharger stations. Yeah, 33 of them are open right now, and all of the 100 that have been installed, they have the universal adapter. So it has the primary for Teslas, but it has the other. I think they said 2 or 3 adapters, which will be usable in this station. Okay, out currently in Barstow, we have more than 200 EV stations that exist within the Barstow region, and in this different universal. Even at Walmart, there are 14 EV stations even at Walmart. It's the universal stations. So for anyone who's passing through Barstow, if you get to Barstow, and if you're driving an electric vehicle, you have nothing to worry about, because we currently have them in existence, and with Tesla bringing in an additional 100 supercharging stations. So yeah, bring your electric vehicles to Barstow. Okay? And we have plenty of land too. That's it.
Well, thank you. Any additional announcements? Okay, being none, thank you for your participation. Our next meeting will be scheduled for Thursday, July 6th at 9:30 a.m. Enjoy lunch. This meeting is now adjourned.
I have always appreciated your comments. Yes.